Hello friends and welcome. I'm Sarah Liz and today I am joining Kendra's card challenge in a YouTube hop featuring some products from This Calls for Confetti. So I have this die set. It's the Happy Layering dies and it has some standard sort of A2 rectangles, but then some smaller ones and a happy word die. That happy word die is the same as this large happy stamp, the happy sentiments. And I love that the second large happy has a space sort of blanked out so you can stamp the sub-sentiments straight on to that happy word. I'm working with sketch number 8 today from Kendra's Card Challenge 14. And in that free printable, this card is shown vertically, like portrait style, but I'm gonna turn it and make it a landscape card, and we're gonna make a shaker. So I've added my A2 panel onto a card base. I just taped that shut with cement tape so it's not popping up on me the whole time. And then there's a couple of layers here, right? So I've got 2 layers of solid colored cardstock, and then I have this layer of rainbow stripes, and I love it so much. I was looking for a way to put that sunshine that's on the back of that pattern paper somewhere else on the card, and I didn't come up with a great option, but definitely I'm thinking about that as well. There are measurements in the printable for the center rectangles, but I went rogue. If you've been here, you know. So I have 2 rectangles of the same size. They're 2 inches by 3 inches. And then the next one is 1 3/4 by 2 3/4. And I'm temporarily taping the navy onto the teal. I made these so they would be proportionate to this happy word die. It actually cuts out the letters and a rectangle around it. So I am creating this thin little frame and then another thicker frame behind it. Now I tried to cut them at the same time. I wasn't sure this would work and I was right. But I just ran it through a second time to make sure I cut all the way through that teal. Then I have a piece of pink cardstock and I put some double-sided adhesive from scrapbook.com on there. I think it's their 2-inch roll. And this makes those into stickers, which I really, really love. Now we can start assembling our shaker, which I like to do independent of the card base. So I'm going to glue this thin navy frame on top of that teal frame. And I find wet glue is the easiest way to do this because I want to make sure it's lining up on all of those inside edges. So I have a little bit of time to kind of wiggle things into place, and it just makes everything a little bit easier. The piece of acetate that I'm using is ever so slightly narrower than that teal frame, so I know it's not going to show behind it. Then I switched to my Nuvo Deluxe adhesive. I find this glue grabs a little better on things like acetate or metallic cardstock, and I'll just put that all around the edge of the frame, and I like to squish it down with my finger to make sure it's not going to ooze out on top of the acetate, and then it looks kind of unfinished, kind of messy. So I'll add my acetate behind there. And when I want to add that happy word die, that could be a nightmare, right? There's no way, given how thin those letters are, that I was going to be able to get glue on there and not have it smear. Like, it was just going to be tough. So I saved the rectangle with the happy cut out of it from when I created the frame. And I'm using that to help me place my letters down. And with that double-sided adhesive, these go perfectly into place. There's no glue to worry about. I will also say I cut into the magnetic mat on my Empress. I don't do that when I'm making stickers. Instead, I make sure I'm cutting into the plate, like the acrylic plate, to make sure that it gives me a really nice clean edge. Otherwise, sometimes the adhesive isn't cut cleanly through. To make my shaker, I'm using 2mm foam strips from scrapbook.com. Typically for a shaker, I prefer 3mm because I get more shake and I can put more goodies in there. But I didn't want this card to be too thick. There's just a lot of layers of cardstock and pattern paper. So this worked a little better. And I'll just make sure I'm choosing sequins that are fairly flat. I'm also going to go along the inside with my anti-static powder tool to try to make sure my shaker bits aren't going to stick to the side, that they can really move around. I'm using 2 different embellishments on the inside of this shaker, and I decided instead of putting it on top of the navy that I'm going to put it on top of this white glitter cardstock. So I'm removing all the backing paper first because sometimes that shakes everything and my bits go flying or they get stuck in the adhesive. But I'm going to hold that over the top and see if I like the mix I'm creating. These are the white sparkle spots. They're super flat, a little bit translucent, and very glittery. It looks like my glitter cardstock. So I decided to also add some blue sparkle spots just to give this a little variation in color. It's just the movement that I'm looking for. This is not going to be like an in-your-face kind of shaker. I like to pick it up and hold it in my hand. I have one finger on each of the 4 sides, and that helps me to kind of feel everything lining up into place before I press it onto that double-sided foam. It's pretty straight, but just to tidy everything up, I'll take my scissors and I'm just wedging them to the background and cutting off any excess from the white glitter cardstock, but not from the frame. Then I can center this on my card with some wet glue. The stripes on the one hand should help me to center this, but I tell you what, I was not sure. It was really centered for the longest time. It might be a touch high, but I don't think it matters. It's all good. In the sketch, they have some sort of like flower or circle something down in one corner and some banners on the other side. And so I'm going to use this party hat. It's from the Birthday Wreath add-on from Spellbinders. And I'm just going to start gluing these pieces together. They come together very quickly. While I'm doing that, I want to tell you about the hop in the description box below. Just click more or show more. You will find a link to the playlist for the hop, and it makes it really easy to find all the videos in the same place. There are prizes for this hop, and you will find details for all of that in the description box below, along with instructions for downloading the Kendra's Card Challenge 14 free printable that helps you to make 15 cards with really awesome cutting guides. So I finished up my hat, and I haven't put the frill on the bottom because I knew it was going to be a little bit big. I wanted to sit entirely inside of my A2 card. So I'm just going to trim some off the bottom and then a little bit more until I feel like it fits the way I want it to. I'm making sure I've got a curve at the bottom of that hat that looks kind of like what's on the frill. It doesn't have to be perfect. We're covering up that edge, but close will help. Then I'm looking to remove one ruffle on each side, and I find this is easier to do before you glue it on. There's a video where I struggle with it a little bit. This was much, much easier. And so I'm not just cutting a straight line, I'm trying to sort of curve it and match what it looked like before. This is close, but I am also going to curve that top edge, right? It's just a little bit pointy. And so I will curve that as well. A little bit of glue on the bottom of our new hat, and I can add my ruffle, and I am good to go. Then I can start working on my sub-sentiment. I love that this Happy stamp set has so many really great options. Okay, so we can do Happy Valentine's Day, Happy Thoughts, Happy New Year, 4th of July, Halloween, holiday, birthday, Easter, anniversary, Father's Day, Mother's Day, Happy Days Ahead. Like, this is so clever and so versatile. I love, love, love it. There's Happy Gotcha Day. Like, well done. Huge props. I know I'll get a lot of use out of this. So I added some anti-static powder, and then I'm using my Versamark ink to stamp the word birthday. And then I will add some white fine detail embossing powder on top of that. I definitely like fine detail for this because some of those lines are really thin, and this will help me to get the best coverage. Then I'll just bring my heat tool to that. I have to be really careful with my white embossing powder not to overheat. And I got it the first time, you guys. This was a big win. So I have trimmed this nearly to the embossing powder on the top and bottom because I want it to overlap the Happy without covering up so much that you're not sure what the word is. Then I've added an extra strip behind that just for some stability, and I'll get my placement. I'm going to take it all the way out to the right-hand side of my card, and then I clipped a little banner. This was inspired by the sketch. There's two sort of larger banners that go on this card that have that same kind of tail. And so I know I don't follow measurements and things very well, you guys. I am a teacher and I'm a terrible student, but definitely, I think the sketch guided me as I was putting these pieces together. So I'm adding 3mm foam in the places where it's not going to overlap the shaker, between the 2mm foam to create the edges of that shaker, and then the extra cardstock. That was perfect. And then I'll add just a little bit of glue to make sure I can get that straight on there. I added some foam, also 3mm, just behind the top corner of the hat to make sure that it is also supported. I hand deliver most of my cards, so I don't really worry about the thickness of it, but you could certainly make something like this without the shaker so you didn't have so much dimension, and that would go through the mail a whole lot easier. Once I get that added to the top corner of my card, this guy is done. I love how bright and colorful it is. I love that subtle shaker. I hope that you'll give something like this a try. Don't forget to click the playlist and hop along and enter to win the giveaway. Thank you so much for joining me, and I will see you next time.